State your name.
My name is Darcie Bishop, Darcie Bishop.
Occupation.
My occupation is, I am currently serving as the interim chair of the Department of Music at Jackson State University. I'm an associate professor of music, having worked here for 26 years, mainly in the capacity of instructor of trumpet.
Okay. All right. Where did you complete your graduate education?
Well, I completed my graduate education two places. Let me first talk about my master's degree because that's graduate education. I got my master's degree at the Juilliard School of Music in New York City. It's a master's degree in trumpet performance. I got my terminal degree from the University of Mississippi, and that degree is in educational leadership in higher education. It's a PhD in educational leadership.
Okay. What was the topic of your dissertation?
The topic of my dissertation was, I looked at administrators in music departments of colleges in the southeastern part of the country, and I looked at their leadership behavior and compared it to the organizational climate of that department, which meant, did the leader create a good environment for its faculty, or were there characteristics of that leadership's behavior that contributed to a good environment or a bad working environment?
Information you found did you find it useful?
Yeah, I did find it useful. By the end of the study, which took a good while, by the end of the study, what I did find was that there were some particular characteristics that good leaders had that led to good environments for faculty to work in. There were a couple of cases where there were leaders whose qualities didn't come out quite as I would have expected, and still had a good department. And so there were some questions left unanswered in regards to how can you have a good department with a bad leader in some cases. But more than not, most of the good leadership characteristics that I looked at lined up with those things that made a good environment for employees. Mm-hmm.
So what type of research did you conduct, qualitative or quantitative, and why?
It was a quantitative study, I think primarily because it was the easiest way to take as much information as I needed in order to find the answers I was looking for. And it was well ordered that way with that information using surveys. Could it have been qualitative? I'm not so sure it could have been unless I went in another direction, like having interviewed department chairs. But it was, the surveys were all sent through the mail. It was before computer surveys. Nowadays, you can just get a survey on the computer and you can send an email, and that person that you need to complete the survey can just fill it out online and send it right back. But I had to do everything with paper, put everyone in an envelope, put a stamp on everyone, and wait for a return. And it wasn't that long ago, but it was long enough ago that the technology for that kind of thing has changed. It would be even easier now, I think. Mm-hmm.
So how long it took you to do all this?
It took a long, the most difficult part was the initial getting it off the ground. And once it got rolling, finishing it up was fine. But writing the second chapter that's the bibliography or the research foundation that you'll have for the whole paper, that was the most difficult part, to find out all the information that had been done before my dissertation, determine what I could get from my dissertation that would be new, because there's no sense in doing the same thing over again. Once that first part of the dissertation was done, Then the rest was, it was time consuming to do the surveys. It was time consuming to ask the questions on the surveys and put that all together. But it wasn't like a lot of brain work. It was, stuffing envelopes and that kind of thing. Then after I got it all back, when I had to do the statistical analysis, that took a little brain power, and so I had to go back to some of the classes I had in statistics, and I also sought some help from a number of professionals to help me put that together so that I was absolutely positive that what I was putting on paper in my dissertation was correct.
Was it hard to get people to take those surveys?
Yes, it was almost impossible. In fact, what's really interesting about this, Mr. Williams, is I think I got like a 17 or 18% back. Okay, so that's not very many, right? If you send out 100, you only get 18 back. I sent out a lot more than that. But what I was told from my committee and from some of the folks at Ole Miss that I worked with, that was really actually a good return rate on surveys. And guess what? I had to prove that, but there was plenty of documentation and research that had been done that said, yes, if you get between this and this rate of return on surveys, you're doing really good. I think that's abysmal. 18% is lousy. And nowadays, I think because you can do it online, I think that those statistics have changed. I think that you expect a greater return on those survey instruments. So
how you get them say you use inducements?
I don't know. What would you do if you needed somebody to do a survey? Let's say you're doing your dissertation and you do a survey, and let's say you wanted to send one to every department chair of a music department in the country, let's just say. So let's say you send, I don't know, pick a number, 1,000. What would be the incentive? And see, that's the question. What are you going to do? Send them each $5? That's really tough, right? Because who has $5? I mean, that would be a lot of money. And so I think a lot of it goes back to, like when I get surveys online from doctoral students doing dissertations that need information from me. I always do them because I know how hard it was for me to get them, right? So I always do them because I know that they're struggling to get everybody to send it back. And so I think that probably that's the incentive for anybody with a conscience wanting to help a student, complete a project, that they just know that they at one point in their lives had to do it, and so why not, help out. But this is what's really interesting about it. I get companies now asking me to do surveys, and more times than not, textbook companies like music appreciation textbook companies. And more times than not, there is an incentive, a monetary incentive attached. Now, they send out probably thousands of those as well, so they're not giving $25 to everybody. But they do say if you're one of the first 10 that responds, your name will be put into a contest for a $100 gift card.
Okay.
That's an interesting incentive, I mean, if you think about it.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. How important do you think it is for undergraduates to complete a course in research methods?
A course in research methods for undergraduates. I think one, it's discipline specific. It should be discipline specific, and let me give you an example. If you were to get a degree in music performance, I think a module or a short workshop on research and research methods would be adequate if you were to go on in a master's program in music performance, for example. I think if you're in music education, I think a course in research methods would be wonderful, but I don't know where you would fit it in an undergraduate curriculum with all the things that we would be expected to do. Nowadays, though, it seems to me that there's probably such a high percentage of students that go on to master's degrees that they have to have some sense of research and what research is and how to do research in order to survive. In many of the master's programs in music, that's where that research class is. the research methods is typically in the master's level, not in the undergraduate level.
Okay.
I don't know, how is it in Mass Comm? Is there a research class in Mass Comm now?
Yes, I'm taking it now.
That's what this class is.
Yes.
Oh, wow, well, that's very interesting. Okay.
I'm
Very
learning.
interesting.
I'm learning.
Yeah, well, that's great because, we don't have one in our undergraduate. We don't have a specific course in research methods. We do have an elective in research it's called Research in Music and Psychology. So it's not research methods, but it's a class that helps with research, or you do research, so you learn research that way. Our music education classes are not, they're research based, but there's no prerequisite of a research method class. And it may be a shortcoming of the program, I don't know, but I don't know where we would fit it in the curriculum. I just don't know where we would fit it.
I think while we have one, you have aspiring journalists and reporters. I think if they were doing stories.
You'd have to
Sure.
have that. Okay, yeah, that's much more important. Absolutely, I can definitely. What year does it come? You're a senior,
Yeah, I'm seeing.
so it's a 400 level class,
It's I think it's 401.
but it's in every area in Mass Comm.
Yes.
Well, I guess that makes a lot of sense because that's a research based discipline, right? I mean, if you're going to be a reporter, you better know how to go do the research. Now, if you're going to be a cameraman, that would be more technology driven, right?
It would. Then, if to be a cameraman, say a person want to do a music video, and you never heard of that artist before, and you want to pitch them an idea, so you have to go.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So it's pretty good.
Are you enjoying it?
Learning
to enjoy it?
Yes.
That's good.
So, are you working on anything now in your area?
In research or in my area?
Yeah.
You want the honest answer or the answer for your project? The honest answer is that my days are filled with the work of an administrator. And I am hard pressed to find any extra time for any research. So my current research interests are kind of on hold. On the other hand, if you consider me playing as a professional musician, research, I am spending my free time, continuing to play as a professional musician, which in many senses is research. So that's a long answer to your very short question. So it's a yes and no.
So where you
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Well, I play principal trumpet in the symphony. I play principal trumpet in the Mississippi Symphony. Mm-hmm. You didn't know that? Yeah. I've been doing that for as long as I've been in Jackson.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in fact, when I moved from New York City, before you were born, Mr. Williams, 26 years ago now. And I came to Mississippi initially to play principal trumpet in the symphony. And then I started teaching part-time here, and then it became full-time, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So I've kept my trumpet playing up, and I've played principal trumpet in the symphony all these years. So I worked the administrator job 8 to 5. When I was teaching, I worked the teaching job. And then our rehearsals are sometimes in the evenings and on weekends. So that's what I do with my free time. So it keeps me very busy and leaves little time for this whole idea of, and I do like educational leadership, particularly how, and from my research, how it affects the climate of a department. But yet I hadn't had any extra time to spend really focusing on that.
So as a chair, do you base your research on what you were doing now? You try to.
Well, I suppose if I had any time, I'd probably take another look at departments of music. This time, I would take a closer look at departments that are very similar in scope to this one. Departments with only 15 faculty, departments with a marching band, departments with this kind of budget. And I would probably then look at them and see which of those departments are really doing great things, and then just try to model after that so that we can get this department, really at the top of its game. For the students. It's all for the students. Everything is for the students.
Yes, it is. Well, my time here, I enjoyed it.
Well, I'm glad you did.
So,
Did it cut us off?
any suggestions for budding researchers? Any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, what my number one thing would be to say to you is just keep your eyes wide open. Don't pass judgment, and just make sure that, whatever you're looking at as research, that you always look for another side of the story, you always look for another angle, never with any judgment, and in a direction you may never think that you're going to go. That's what I think.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. I hope